Started, but I just wanted to welcome everyone who's in the session right now. As stated before, my name is Charlene Sutton. I just want to give a very brief introduction of our three presenters.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. There was a little bit of a time communication issue, so
Right.
Fortunately, Caitlin will not be able to join us today, so it'll just be me and Dana, but I will present Caitlin's information as well.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for that information. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Again, my name is Charlene Sutton, and I will take us through this session this morning, which is one of three concurrent sessions. We're looking at teaching life skills to students with severe autism and intellectual disabilities. Our presenters are Maria Parks. She is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, but she spent some time here in warm Jamaica, working with our special needs schools here. And she's currently a special educator working with students with intellectual disabilities and autism. Our second presenter is Dana. Dana is also a graduate of the University of Wisconsin. She has a bachelor's degree in communication studies and disorders, focusing on speech language pathology. She is currently working as a middle school speech language pathologist for her current district for the past 10 years. So we would like to give them a very warm Jamaican welcome, because where they are may not be as warm as we are right now. So we would like to just welcome you virtually to Jamaica and to our conference.
Thank you.
Handing over to you.
All right, thank you. Yes, it is definitely not as warm as it is there. I'm sure we got a mix of rain and snow last night, so that's not ideal. But we're glad. Oh, someone is requesting control. I'm going to say deny. All right. So we are doing life skills in the classroom. So things that we're going to be talking about today are things that we do every single day. It's very close to our hearts, and so sometimes we will talk a lot. So I will try to keep it as short and concise so we have time for questions. But here we are. I keep getting kicked off. Okay, life skills in the classroom. So who we are. So unfortunately, like I said, there was a timing issue. So my counterpart here, Caitlin, she's not going to be here, but we are both special education teachers at a middle school. And then Dana.
I'm a speech language pathologist, so I work on communication skills with the students at the same middle school as Maria and Caitlin.
And we primarily work with students with intellectual disabilities and severe autism. So that's kind of our population right now that we work with. So the whole first part of this is why teach life skills at all, right? It's not math, it's not reading. So at first glance, you are kind of wondering, like, why are we going to take time out of the school day, the academic day, to teach these skills? But the number one reason, or there's a lot of reasons I should say, but one of them is that it takes a long time to develop, learn, and retain new skills. Especially with this population of students, we know that progress is small and gradual. So if we start now, in a few years, they might be more independent in different skills that we are working on. So starting now gives them more independence now, hopefully, and then later in life. We focus a lot on vocational skills and independent living skills, recreation and leisure, and all of these things combine to improve the overall quality of life of these students, which when you think about that is like astounding to me, right? Like the things that we do now when they're in middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for us, can impact like their lives down the road and the quality of life that they have. So starting early and starting now makes the most sense as to why to teach them, because it can make a huge difference in their lives moving forward. Dana, do you want to talk about communication?
Yes. So how does communication fit into that? We like to teach communication skills in the real life functional setting because it develops the real world vocabulary. We can build off of the functional activities, and it's motivating for the students and the hands-on experiences, because with students with more severe disabilities, hands-on learning is very beneficial to them. Engagement with real-world skills is high, so adults can comment on what the students are doing, such as the actions, either that the student themselves are doing or modeling the actions they want them to learn, and also providing language to go with those actions. It builds on their current language skills and expands their current level of functioning, always trying to go a bit higher than what the student is currently able to do. Maybe it's 2 or 3 words when they are nonverbal. And then we're also considering use of augmentative and alternative communication, such as high-tech devices like a voice output app or device that speaks the language for them, or low-tech pictures we have found have been particularly engaging for a lot of our more severe students who have the language delays. And even gestures has been very helpful, because a lot of students don't, have to rely on having the device or, the pictures with them, because they're able to do a head nod or head shake or simple signs. This is an example of one of our visual supports. It's called Agent Action Object, and it is a way where we have the students put the pictures on the strip to request from an adult some sort of help or action to help them get their needs met. It encourages a positive connection between people and students, because it kind of creates that, like, oh, this person is a positive reinforcement in my life because they're helping me do something that I need.
Oh, wow.
It presents people as objects and not just, or people as sources of help, not just objects. Because sometimes when children have severe disabilities, they don't always see the connection between people and positive things in their lives, because a lot of times we're asking them to do stuff that they don't want to do. So this form of communication was meant to increase the positivity between the adult caregivers and the students. And
Yeah,
then, sorry, yeah.
No, you're good. But in the book too are all of their symbols. So as students become more independent with this skill, students then can also leaf through that book and find the symbols that they want to be able to do it. Of course, that happens much later on after they have gained independence with being able to create the sentences, but there's always room for extensions either way.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about ASA stuff right here?
Sure. The one that she's pointing to with her cursor is we had a very significant behaviors with this student. She had very little communication. Most of it was like banging her head on the floor when she was frustrated. So this was the 3 objects that she liked to help regulate those emotions. So we had that on a board, which was on the wall actually, so she could grab the thing that she wanted and give it to an adult in order to get that desired object. We did still have to do teaching with it, because sometimes she would grab an object she didn't necessarily want, but it definitely decreased some of those aggressive, self-injurious and aggressive behaviors that she was presenting.
Yep, because she could then request what she wanted or needed. So yeah, and these are just some examples of some more of the low-tech visuals that we use. Like Dana said previously, we have noticed more of our students have more success with more of the low-tech stuff. So these are just some examples. Are you good, Dana?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so before we kind of get started into things that we have done, just wanted to put this out there as reminders to all. So when you're working with this population, small growth over time is what you're going to see. You're not going to see you show a student how to do it one time and then they got it. It's going to take weeks to months to years in order to see the change, the small growth over time. So when you are working with these students on different types of life skills or even academic skills, stick with it. Consistency is key, because if you get frustrated, like I know I have before, and I'm like, well, I'm going to change it. Well, that doesn't give the student the opportunity to keep practicing those skills and give them the time that we know that they need in order to master those skills. So keep with it, stick with it, and give that positive reinforcement as well, because that will help with engagement. If your student is not enjoying what they are doing, they are probably not going to put a lot of effort into it, and they are not going to retain it. So that's another big thing, is giving positive reinforcement. So a lot of our students really enjoy cheering and clapping. So you'll hear me in my classroom. I'm probably the loudest one on my floor, where I'm cheering, I'm clapping after a student does something correctly, because that will help with overall engagement. They want to do well. They want to see me cheering. So for my students, it's cheering. For your students, it might be something else, and maybe a reward of some sort. And that also brings me to engagement and interest, which is very important. If your student is not engaged, if they are not interested in what you are doing, they're not going to stick with it. So we use a lot of, for one of my students, she loves Barbies. So anytime we can introduce and put Barbies on something, whether it's just a picture of a Barbie or, you know, something like that. We also have a lot of Elmo things around my classroom, because that helps a lot too. And then the visuals, whether you're doing pictures, whether you're showing something, visuals are super important, because a lot of our students need to see what's happening to understand what's happening. So just our verbal always is not enough. So whether you're doing actions, like in my videos, you'll see me doing actions all the time, or whenever I'm with my students, those are very important. So just a few reminders as we kind of get into it.
And I want to add, I think we made this mistake in the beginning quite a bit, but when we started, we would present like a lot at the students, like, oh, we're going to teach them how to, you know, request all these different things. And that was a mistake on our part, because we had much more success just starting with like maybe one thing, like identifying the most reinforcing thing like they want, and then just working on that for a long time helped a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Starting out small. And I kind of allude to that later, but picking one thing and just trying one thing for a little bit and seeing how it goes. Because like Dana said, if you put too much in one time, you know, it's not going to be successful either. All right, so how do I start? So these are some of the questions that I started asking myself when I started to do more life skills type activities in my classroom. So I first thought about what skills my students had and what skills we needed to work on more. Whether that was fine motor skills, whether that was organizational skills, whether that was matching skills, all types of different skills. What do my students have, and what do I believe that they need more work on? And then also, what are real jobs that they could have one day? And thinking about the smaller tasks within those jobs. So for example, I know of a person who works at a hotel, and their sole job at the hotel is to fold towels. They don't do they don't do the cleaning, they don't necessarily do the check-in, whatever, but they have their job of folding towels, and they're very good at it. Another example is some people just rolling silverware for a restaurant. They can't necessarily do the job of a server, or maybe washing dishes, but they can roll silverware. So that's their job. So what are some smaller tasks within those bigger job areas that they could potentially do as a source of employment? And then start small and use what you have. So starting out small, like I said, picking one area, one thing to try, and using what you have. You'll see in some of my pictures and my examples that a lot of the things are either donated or been collected. Like I have a grocery store where I've just saved all my recyclables for a couple of months and used those. So use what you have and then see what the kids are interested in and start there too. Like I know I had one student who really loved matching things, so I tried to use that in my grocery store example. So those are some ideas. So now what we have done. So these are some vocational jobs and activities. So the first one that I started out with was server jobs. And I thought about the different things that servers do. They take orders, they sort silverware, they roll silverware, they do place settings. So I had my students doing that. For my students who are a little bit lower, we started out with the sorting the silverware. And once they had mastered that, we moved on to rolling silverware. But for my students who already had those skills, we started with rolling silverware, and then we moved on to place settings. And I had a visual for some of my students, and then for my higher students, I took that visual away once they had it. We also practiced taking orders, where I was pretending to like be the customer and they had to take my order. So these are some of the things that we have done for server jobs. Again, things that I could do in my classroom, things that they are or could see in the real world works situation. The other one was a grocery store. So I made little shelf tags. We had some cabinets in my classroom and I decided to make that the grocery store. So this is where I was talking about, I saved up my recyclables for a couple of weeks, a couple months. And I'm a person of habit, so I had lots of multiples of things. But what I do for this is the kids practice shelving items. So I put them all on the desk. I'm like, okay, well, you have to figure out where they go. And some of the students, for my lower students, I have them match things that are the same. So there's usually multiples of different things. So I have them match it the same. And for my higher up students, I take them all off the shelf and I have them look at the shelf tags and use the shelf tags to reshelve things. We haven't done it yet, but I want to do inventory with them. So we have this many, I need this many. How many more do we need to order? And then we also have done cleaning with it as well, because, you know, in stores you have to clean things. In this picture, a student had made a mess, so he was cleaning up his mess with a broom. So focusing on those real world life skills. Washing dishes. I mean, they were clean, but I wanted them to practice that skill, so I had them washing those dishes. Again, these things can be donated. You can ask other people in your school if there are any, if they have things that they're getting rid of, they can put things away once the dishes are done. And I've even used paper plates and plastic cups for having the kids put things away, because that's another skill, is matching things the same. Cleaning counters. And then in this picture here with the newspaper, the students love making the mess, of course. So I just crumpled up a bunch of newspapers and I tell them, okay, all right, we're going to practice sweeping. So I have them throw the newspapers all over the floor and they absolutely love it. They get a kick out of it. And then it's their job, they know to sweep it up and then put it in a bin, just like they would when they're sweeping floors. So another example of cleaning. Laundry and dishes, same kind of idea, using clothes that have been donated to us. Matching socks, like those are real world life skills. Putting clothes away, putting things that are the same together. Sorting clothes by the type of clothes, by color. Those are all different types of things that they can do. And one of my favorite things to do has been cooking. So doing cooking with my students, we use a lot of visual recipes, again with the visuals. There is a teacher that goes by Breezy Special Ed on Teachers Pay Teachers that I absolutely love. I think I have all of her recipes. And we've actually, pre-COVID times, made recipes in class. So the kids are practicing using the different tools that they would find in a kitchen, so that maybe one day they would be able to make a quesadilla in the microwave on their own, or a healthy snack with celery. So that is another one where we practice how to measure things, how to mix things, sanitary things, washing your hands, making sure your hands aren't in your hair or in your food, or I mean in your mouth, you know, different things like that. So cooking is another big one where the things that they learn now are going to carry them through the rest of their lives. So we might as well start early. Another one is dollar up activities, where students are looking at how much something costs and adding $1 to know how much money they would have to give in order to buy it to the cashier. And this is an example of them working on that. And then also, this kind of goes with the next couple slides with community. So having them find things in grocery stores, writing down the name of it, how much does it cost, and looking at the dollar up for that kind of stuff too. So that's another skill where they're in the grocery store, it costs $3.49. How much money do I have to give the person? So practicing that skill now will help them when they are in the grocery store. And then probably one of my favorite things that unfortunately we have not been able to do this year is community. So every Wednesday we would take our students, all 20 of them, out into the community. We would teach the kids how to ride the city bus, how to use a bus pass, sitting with their peers on the bus, expected behaviors on the bus. We would take them to a restaurant where they learn to order, pay for their food, sit with peers, have conversations, how to clean up after themselves after they were done at this restaurant. And then we would take them to some sort of a store where we would do a scavenger hunt or finding prices of items or finding locations within the store, all those different kinds of functional activities that give them the real world experience of practicing those functional skills. So we would do that every Wednesday from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that this year. But another example of how we are trying to teach these kids the life skills that they will be able to use for years and years to come afterwards. Dana, do you have anything to add about community?
No, just that it is very motivating for them because of the fact that they just really enjoy it, and it's just been a really great way to practice all the functional skills, especially communication skills.
Yeah, definitely. And then we would come back to school and we would have the kids all share about where they went and what they learned or what they did, so that they were sharing with each other and having another opportunity for communication about what they had done during the day. So yes, one of the best parts of my job for sure has been doing community.
Yes, I think just piggybacking off that, we kind of force them to talk to each other because we have found a lot of times many of the students like to only talk to the adults, and they're so used to talking to adults that they don't always seek out peer relationships like they're typically developing peers. So community, we really force them to sit at a table with each other and talk to each other, and it has helped.
Definitely. All right, so kind of next steps for you. I know we've talked a lot, and so I want to make sure there's time for questions if you guys have any questions, but just kind of thinking, we've shared a lot of different ideas, and I know different cultures, different resources that are available to you might be different, but I urge you to try and think creatively and think outside of the box about how you could potentially use what you do have to make meaningful experiences for your students that make sense for them. Like, I don't necessarily want you to do exactly what I did, because I don't think that would be helpful for you or your students, but thinking about where are you at right now and what is something that I can do for my students that makes sense for me and makes sense for them to be able to do. Think about maybe potentially picking one student and using something that they are interested in to help you guide that thinking. Make a plan and pick one small thing to do. One activity, one new habit, even something as simple as I have my students now, they know where their materials are located in my classroom, and I have them go independently, go get it out of my cabinet. Like, they know where it is and they know how to get it out. And I know that they know, but sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get them to do it. But working on even that independent skill of being able to, I tell them something, they need to go get it and bring it back to their desk and do it independently and confidently is something that we've been working on for so long. But it's a habit that I want them to get into. Like, yes, I know where my stuff is and I can go get it, to prevent some of that learned helplessness that sometimes we see. And then try it out and reflect. It's not going to go perfect. It's not going to go how you imagined, and that's okay. Reflect on what went well, think about what you could change for next time, and stick with it. So that was our kind of my parting words of wisdom. Dana, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. So now we also have time. I left some time on purpose for some questions. It is such a big topic, talking about life skills. And so if you guys have any questions, I would love to hear them. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, hopefully, so that way I can see your guys' faces. I feel like I've just been talking to a blank screen the whole time.
Thank you so very much, Maria and Dana. Your presentation did actually give some very, very practical strategies for teaching our children with severe intellectual disabilities. I'm going to ask our participants if there's anyone who has any questions. You need to use the raise hand feature, and then I will allow you to ask the question. If you don't want to ask the question, then I would also ask that you write your question in the chat, and then we can address those. I believe we have one such participant, so let me just unmute. Ms. Martin, you may go ahead with your question.
Okay, morning, everybody. Thanks again for having me here. Ladies, it was a very good presentation. I was just wondering if it's possible for me to get a copy of your presentation to include in my e-portfolio.
Sure. I will just have to edit it a little bit to get the student faces out of the pictures, but I am more than happy to make sure that it gets shared out to all the participants. So I'll work with Samantha on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. Also, please note that the session is being recorded, and I believe it will be posted on the TTC's website. If not, you can call to find out further information. All right, Ms. Hales will unmute so that you can ask your question. Go ahead, please. N. Hales?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Okay. Student who is 6, not verbal, but needs to learn how to use the toilet. Do you include that in your life skills training? And if so, can you give us some ideas?
Dana, do you have any ideas off the top of your head? Otherwise, I think I might.
Bathrooming is usually something you have more experience with, but
No, the language part. Yeah. So, and I definitely would be working with the whole team, especially if there was somebody who did some sort of language in your school. Toileting is one of the hardest things to teach kids if they don't already have it coming to me. However, with one student right now, we are working with her on it, and we're trying to figure out at what point in the day she goes to the bathroom. So, for example, today for about every 20 minutes or so, we're taking her to the bathroom and having her sit on the toilet. And she is one who is highly motivated by praise and cheering and clapping. So I have a feeling that once we get her on the toilet and she goes one time and we provide that positive reinforcement to her in the form of, for her, cheering and clapping, that she'll start to get the idea of this is what I'm supposed to do. The other thing that I've done with students before is try to find social stories of explaining how to go to the bathroom and what we do and the routine to see if some of that modeling through the use of that story helps as well.
Yes, and I would recommend using simple language because they're nonverbal, sticking to 1 or 2 word, directions to help.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And the consistent language. If someone is saying we're going to the bathroom and another person saying we're going to the restroom, that could be very confusing. So making sure that everyone is on the same page as to what language that you are using.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to read questions from the chat now, and then I'll take the other live questions. What are some of the criteria that you use in terms of self-assessment?
For my students, I'm wondering if that is.
Page Kajay Page, I don't know if you want to clarify.
Teachers as well as students. Okay, so for self-assessment, for myself, I usually am too hard on myself, and Dana and Caitlin are the same way. And we are always thinking about how we could do things better. And for us, it's more of a matter of thinking about what our students did well, what played to our students' strengths, and figuring out how we can change that to hopefully increase motivation, increase student success. For my students, for my life skills, have started to create rubrics for my students. And I've done 3 categories, basic, proficient, and advanced. And depending on how the students do with the skills, I've been marking every couple weeks. I do an assessment to see kind of where they are and if they are progressing, how they are progressing. So I've just kind of been creating something myself to try to track progress with my students for those skills that I've been working with them on.
Yeah, I agree. And we've created rubrics together to measure the success of the community trips. Typically, we pick one area to really focus on for communication. And then we base it off of like the amount of cueing each student needs, and then also what skills they're presenting, like if they're nonverbal and like looking, like making eye contact versus like if they're responding to people's directions or questions, and then if they're independently initiating. That's all been part of our particular rubric because those were like certain skills that we had been focusing on. Typically, the students with the more severe disabilities don't do well with standardized assessments because those are usually based off of norms from like the whole population. So they include typically developing people. So because these students are, in such a small percentage of the population, it doesn't always reflect their skill level. So we usually go with the informal ones that we kind of design ourselves.
Yes, I would say, and a lot of performance based, like, can you do this and show me that you can do it? Definitely.
All right, thank you very much. Another one from the chat. What are some of the key strategies that we can employ for severe language delay?
Start small. I think the visuals are very important, and we just, sometimes we even just have like whiteboards that we're drawing pictures on. I've seen our assistants who work with the students, they read a little story and then they just quick make some visual pictures for them to choose from. Otherwise, for things that we want them to work on requesting a little more, that isn't so like changing, they do like the pictures that we showed. Some students do have the higher tech voice output devices. Most of the ones that we have used with our more severe needs students, they don't tend to really like those very much, and they tend to like the technology to go on YouTube, and it's somewhat of a struggle. So we like the more low-tech ones. I have seen it with a student. The most success was actually a student who had language prior and was in an accident. So she had all that the language, she just couldn't get it out. So that's where I've had the most success with the higher tech stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I would say too, like Dana was saying, starting small. If there is a toy that they like, if there is something that that they want, get a picture of it and have them touch that picture before they get it. Let them play with it for a few minutes, whatever, take it back and say like, okay, like show me what you want, have them touch it, they get it back. Do that for as long as it takes for him or her to understand that touching that picture means that I get something in return. And if it's a highly desired item, that's what they're going to want to do. That's what they're going to want, is to like get that thing. So if they need to do that, that will help. And then as soon as they kind of start to understand that, you can start to slowly add more symbols, more pictures. And I would, again, use that highly desired item or items so that they are engaged with it. They want to do it so that they can get that thing.
Yeah, if you have a container that they can even, like, especially if they can see through the container, that's a good one because it'll be in there and then they have to request it to get it out.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to ask Judith Richards to unmute so that she can ask her question. Judith? All right, Judith, I am not here. We're not hearing you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I am not hearing from Judith, so I'm going to take another question from the chat. Very practical and informative presentation at my school. I will have to share this information, but oh, sorry, that's not a question. It's about the presentation as well. Due to the pandemic, children are unable to have face-to-face interaction. Do you think this is a major fallback for these children with disabilities?
Yes and no. Because I have some students that have been totally virtual this year, and they are making so much progress in the area of life skills and vocational skills because parents are able to work with those types of things at home. We've been doing a lot of videos, and actually something that I wanted to share that I totally forgot of was Caitlin and I have put together a Google Doc of the different videos that we have made this year that you guys will have access to. They're just on YouTube, so you can pull them up. There's some literacy, some math, and then my vocational skills videos that I've made for my classes. So when the presentation gets shared out, I'll make sure that you have access to that as well. It's a Google Drive link, so that if you want to use those with any of your students, you are more than happy to. But we have done a lot of videos and video modeling of how we work with our students, just even for the parents, like, hey, you can do this when you're working with your child. But also in our videos, we have tried to be as purposeful as possible. And for literacy, for example, we always have like visual cue cards when I'm asking a question. So I'll read the book and then I'll say, okay, read with me. And then I'll like pause for a second and then I'll go slow, just like I would in class. And it's awkward when you're making those videos, but there's those natural pauses where I would wait for my students to respond in class that I'm waiting in my video. And then they'll like repeat after me. Like parents have said like, wow, your timing was really great. Like they were reading with you. And then I'll like the two choices, like, okay, what did we just read about? And I'll say, touch the screen, show me which one. And of course, I can't tell which one they're picking when it's doing a video, but you know, I'm assuming the best. So I'm like, yeah, great job. You're right. The answer was this one, you know? So they are still being able to get those literacy and those math skills. So we haven't seen as much regression as I think we all thought we might see, because we have been able to keep up with videos and video modeling of our instruction. So students that have us in person get the same thing as they do at home almost.
I want to say too, I was surprised that when they do see us, they're like really happy, which was kind of shocking because I thought they'd just want to stay at home. But like a lot of the students really missed us and wanted to come back. So when we do see them in video chats, they're actually more engaged than I expected for, you know, for the level of disability that some of them have.
And I think that's international because I believe some of our children too are missing our teachers as well.
Yeah.
All right, here's one other one. What is the best motor development or planning activity that you have used and found very effective for students with severe disabilities?
Let's see. Could you repeat the question one more time? I'm trying to find it in the chat. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, I'm doing that. What is the best motor development or planning activity that you have used and have found very effective for students with severe disabilities?
We did an action, a bunch of actions where we did like jumping and running, and the kids really enjoyed that because we paired it with language, like parks run, or
Yes.
you know, or like rolling a ball to each other, kind of like play seemed to be really motivating. I don't know, Parks,
Sure.
you do more.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and everything I do, I pair with actions. So whether we were talking about elks the other day, I put horns on my head, like, oh, look at it, like we're talking about elks and the students did it. And so anytime you can incorporate movement into whatever you're doing is great. Specifically for students who have like specially designed instruction for physical education, we, when they're virtual, have been using a lot of like Go Noodle videos that you can find on YouTube, or Cosmic Kids Yoga to try to keep them active at home. So those are just some kind of different things, but anytime I can pair a verbal with an action of some sort, it really helps to increase their retention of the skill.
All right, and I had asked Judith to unmute, but she typed her question in the chat.
Okay,
she says this is very personal for her. She has a 15-year-old who has DS, so she's intellectually challenged. It is difficult for her to work at home. She is able to access all the learning platforms, but she's just not interested. Any tips? She likes to do nails and makeup.
You know, we have one student who hates doing anything a lot of the time, but she knows that if she gets her stars, and we have a star chart, if she gets her stars, 5 stars for a work session, she knows that she can get her iPad, which is what she wants. She wants to watch some videos. So try maybe using, if you have like some sort of a chart, like it's honestly a chart like this. I'm going to draw it quick. And we have little Velcro things, but you could use stickers. You could use whatever you had. And here like are where the stickers would go. And here would be a picture of the desired activity she wants afterwards. And my student knows right now that if she gets all 5, she can have this. She can get the iPad. So maybe when you're first starting out with this, you do one activity, and then you can do your hair or your nails or your makeup, whatever it is. And then once they kind of understand that, like, oh, if I do this work, then I get this thing that I want, you can increase that a little by little. So I would try that. And I would challenge to some of the teachers or whatever video she's watching to try to use something of interest to her. So maybe you're counting makeup compacts, or maybe you're counting nail polishes for math, or reading about nail polish, something like that, to see if you can spark her interest that way too.
We actually did have a student that was really into nails, and if she did certain tasks, she got like 1 nail painted by a teacher. And then like, every time she did more, I cannot remember, it was several years ago, but I can't remember how many tasks she had to do to get a nail painted, but we kind of built up from there. And then she would go around showing us all her nails, and it was really very nice.
Nothing is off limits in our job.
Wonderful. That's a really good idea about one activity, 1 nail.
Yes.
And that's what we want, to get all our children to be independent and to have these life skills so that they can be independent citizens. Or last, I think we can do maybe one last comment. This one is coming from Maxine. She's saying getting parents engaged is a wonderful thing. However, we have some parents who are really not fully engaged with their children. Some are not working and they're at home. However, they're having so much excuse of that their mental focus is not allowing them to get engaged with their children. Some complained obviously of their financial stresses. How can we get those parents to fully get them engaged with their children?
This is a hard one for sure. I think no matter where we are in the world right now, we're facing this. I would for some of my parents, it was a matter of having a conversation with them with, okay, what is something that you can do? Like, I know that you feel like there's a lot happening right now, and what is one thing that you feel like you can start with? Whether that was cooking at home, something that they're already doing, or helping out with laundry, something that they already have to do, and starting with that, and hopefully building up a rapport with that family of like, okay, we're this week, you know what? We're just going to start with you read a book at home with your child and they help cook dinner all week. You know, something small like that, something that is manageable for the parents, manageable for the students, and start there. And then hopefully you'll be able to build up your relational capacity with them to continue to ask and try out new and different things. I know with a lot of our videos, we've had to adapt them because parents have said that they're maybe not as interesting to the students or whatever. And so trying to adapt kind of what we're doing on our side too, to make them visually interesting to them using the topics that they enjoy. You know, that has helped a little bit. The star charts that I talked about, you know, having the parents potentially implement something like that at home sometimes helps. But I would say, you know, start off small with your parents. I keep telling them that, like, we're in the partnership together, like you and I, so I can only do as much as you can do, and you can only do as much as I can do. So I understand that. So try to maybe start off small, something that they feel that they can do and they feel is manageable, and then kind of go from there.
Thank you very much. And we do hope, I've been seeing it in the chat, that it has been very informative and very practical in the skills that and the advice that you have presented to all our participants. And so I want to say thank you both for sharing with us in this in this session, teaching our life skills to our students with severe autism and intellectual disabilities. Just to say, participants, that I have posted in the chat the evaluation form for this session. I ask that you will complete the form. It is going to be very, very useful for the organizers in going forward. This is the first virtual, and so it's going to be extremely informative to them as we go forward. So I think we're going to be going on to our next sessions. The second concurrent sessions are just about ready. So thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye, Maria.
Bye.
Bye, Dana.
Bye.